Good afternoon, it's Neil, your DevOps contractor expert type person here. How you doing? So today we are going to be going straight into the lovely subject of IT development team roles and responsibilities. So let's strap in and get on with it. So team structure. Like any well-organized team, there's going to be a number of roles, and each one of those roles can be fulfilled by one or more people, or sometimes you can have one person performing one or more role, or roles, I suppose you'd call it. And so it depends on how big the team is, how much work there is to do, and all those sort of things. To structure. So what does a team look like? So I just stole this picture. I say stole, I created it for my book, Who Moved My Servers, where I talk about teams and DevOps and all sorts of things. And in it we can see that there's a number of roles that are within the specific team that I've shown here, and so we'll go through each one of these in turn. So our first questionable role is project manager. So from a project manager point of view, usually a team is put together to either deliver a new product or project or to look after one. I mean, there is a software delivery life cycle, which can go from initial inception all the way through to decommissioning that service, and that cycle can be over a short period, or it can be over a very long period, like years maybe. But as a project manager, you're generally brought in just to get the thing going. What do we need? What are certain milestones? But project manager can be very sort of waterfall type based, if you're aware of that term. But some organizations like to have a project manager just for somebody to act as a reporting head, where the central information can all be kept, and therefore the stakeholders of the project can talk to the project manager, who will then appraise them of status, where we are, budget variance, all that sort of fun stuff. So moving on to the product owner. Now this sometimes can be merged in with the project manager, and so some of the phrases and terms might overlap. The main reason to have a product owner is to have the overall vision and roadmap of the product. They are also the mouthpiece of the customer, if you like. So does the product meet the end user needs? What tasks do we need to do? What features do we need to be implemented? What bugs do we need fixing? And so then they'll put together some tasks, which is why I say moving or working in conjunction with the project manager, because a lot of the project manager is coming up with breaking down a massive goal into smaller tasks and then into smaller tasks. And some of that can be done by the product owner as well. Or if it's the same person, then it's inside the same person's head. So let's talk about the Scrum Master, sometimes called delivery lead. Other phrases I can't think of right now, but I'm sure there's lots of other names that you can think of. If you can think of any others, put them in the comments below. But the Scrum Master's main purpose is to remove obstacles. And removing obstacles ensures a smooth workflow. But what the heck does that mean? Well, generally in software development, as a developer, you want to know one thing: what are you delivering? And what does that look like? But sometimes as a developer, there's things that are beyond your control. And so the Scrum Master's job is to eliminate, or at least deal with, any obstacle that might stop anyone in the team from doing what they want to do or doing what they need to do. And this invariably normally means talking to other teams, other stakeholders, getting cooperation or ideas from places external to the team. Depending on the size of the team, let's imagine that that big picture I showed you just now, but we don't have all of those roles fulfilled. We've got a small team of developers and we've got a Scrum Master, and that's it. In that case, we might need cooperation from other teams. We might need to borrow a DevOps person or a QA, or I'll get to these roles later. But those other roles also need to have participation in the team to deliver what it needs to deliver, and the Scrum Master can help lubricate those relationships and make sure that not only everybody in the team works together, but they also can work with external teams where required. So software developers, I've already mentioned those. These are the main engineers of the team. They create the stuff. They review the stuff. They make sure the stuff does what the stuff does. Write tests, maintains the code, code reviews. I'm a great advocate of pairing. If you've got two people looking at the same piece of code or coming up with the same piece of code, you've got those checks and balances. Is that quality code? Is it easy to read? Because if you've written it, of course you think it's easy to read, but if somebody else looks at it, they can then give you that helpful steer on to make it even better. And so this improves the quality of the code. Does it take a bit longer? Sure it does, but you end up with a higher quality product. And that product will perform better. It's easier to maintain, easier to read, easier to modify, and less bugs in it. Talking of bugs, quality assurance. So if you're lucky enough to have a QA in your team, see, this is one of the roles that you might have to go external to your team for. But sometimes you can have that expertise inside, and somebody else, like one of the developers, maybe they have two hats. They've got their developer hat and then they take that off and then they put their quality assurance hat on. And this role is in charge of creating and executing test plans and identifying bugs, holding those high standards of code, and resolving some of the issues that are developed within that. Quality assurance is our internal check before we let the customer see it. The idea being is that we can catch any issues and bugs and things before the customer then goes, oh, that's wrong, or why does it do that when I do this? Let's catch those sort of errors first. It's quality assurance coming up with those testing plans to make sure that we catch all of those. Now, this is an advisory role, I would say, in the majority of cases, because the developers are the ones that are going to be writing the tests, because then we can automate those. And running stuff automatic is really quick. Computers can do stuff really quickly. They can mess stuff up really quickly, and they can fix stuff really quickly. So having those tests in place and automating them then makes the testing plan all go together and ensures that the customer ends up with a quality product. How do we automate those tests? Well, how do we automate lots of things? And we can have this DevOps engineer role. Now, someone says DevOps is a thing. Well, it is. It's the bringing together of developers and operations. And so then we ended up with instead of the developers and operations working together, some of the ops guys stood up and learned programming. Some of the developers stepped up and learnt about operations, and we got a person that can fulfill development and operations. And because there were so many people doing those two roles, eventually it merged into just one person doing one role called DevOps. And DevOps means we're looking after the infrastructure, the deployment pipelines, that automated testing, and then doing it in a reliable and scalable way. Some people often talk about CI/CD systems. That's not continuous improvement, it's continuous integration and continuous deployment. So we can have stuff like a piece of code gets written, it gets submitted, we then straight away get a machine, the CI/CD system, get that system in, it then clones that stuff, picks up the tests, runs the test, tells us the result of the tests, and if everything's fine with those tests, maybe deploy it onto the next system in the line. Let's deploy it into a QA system, a quality assurance environment, where we can then run performance tests and security tests against it. And again, come back with those responses. But have a well-defined pipeline, everything automated, and those checks and balances where it's given the feedback really quickly back to the developers. So now we turn to the UI UX designers. Now these guys and gals are really important. Everybody in the team is important, but ultimately, if the product user interface and the user experience is rubbish, no one's going to use your product. It could be the best software in the world, but if it's really difficult to use and work, no one's going to use it. More importantly though, these guys actually talk to customers. So if you're the shy type and like developing, this role is the savior. Because as well as the product owner, we've got the UX and UX designers. They'll actually go out and they'll talk to the customers, and they will assess what they say, and they'll ask what they want, and they'll share their experiences. They will do some of the user acceptance testing, which is another level of testing where we actually find out how easy it is for the user to do the thing, that feature that they wanted. Performing user research as well, finding out what the new features are that they want. Or sometimes it's just identifying the problem, and then the problem can move on to our next role in order to work out what that is further on. So if the UX and UI designers have spoken to the users, they've done some research, and they can identify a problem that the users have, let's step into the business analyst, which will then analyze that problem, turn it into requirements, write some documentation, communicate between the stakeholders and the development team and the QAs and the UIs and UXs, and then ultimately work with the project and the product owner in order to come up with some tasks where we can meet that demand, design that feature, implement the feature, make sure that the users can use the feature, and all those things, so that everyone's got a clear idea on what the user wants, how the user's going to get it, and delivering that user feature. And we've got the QAs that can fix all the bugs. Well, what's holding all of this up? Well, we've got system administrators. Now, as I've mentioned before, we've got dev and we've got ops. This is the ops. And a lot of the time this role is combined into the DevOps role. But the system administrators, they're there to maintain the IT infrastructure. So at one level it might be the laptops that you're using to develop on, if it's not your own laptop. But from the other side of things, it's when we're running that deployment pipeline, where does that code actually go? Where is it hosted so that the users can use that software? Is it hosted internally because it's just an internal application for the company that you're within? Is it hosted on the internet? So therefore, the whole world could access it if they wanted to. But putting it there is one thing. Making sure it's updated and tested, we've already discussed that through the pipelines. But then the underlying infrastructure, they're all servers, their disks, their CPUs, all this stuff goes wrong. And so that we need to make sure that all that stuff that goes wrong doesn't affect everything. So we want to be system highly available. If it's on the internet, everyone can access it. It needs to be secure, so only the correct people can access it. If something goes wrong, we need to ensure that we've got backups and a disaster recovery plan. And if deployments don't work, then we need that level of technical support and troubleshooting. Another role that's sometimes within a software development team and sometimes has to be sourced external is database administrators. So most applications require a data store of some description. Even the bare minimum one says what's your email address and your password, it needs to store that somewhere so that it knows it's you. But other applications might not need that level of information. Other applications need a lot of data. If you're looking at a weather app, you think, well, that doesn't need much data, does it? But if you've seen Windy, crikey, that's got data about the wind, the temperature, the forecasts, the thunderstorms, how much the oceans weigh. It's crazy amount of data they've got in their application. And so we need to store that stuff somewhere where it's quick and easy to get out. And that's where database administrators come in. They'll help you structure the database, make sure that it's got a good level of integrity. What does integrity mean? It means it's, doesn't fall out of sync with other stuff. Integrity means you can rely on the data that's there. And so if a piece of data is missing, what does the database do? Does it say, hey, this is missing, or does it clean up, or is there anything referring to it? All that kind of crazy stuff. Then we've got the security aspect. Databases are by their very nature very sensitive. They hold a lot of data, so they need to be kept very secure, even more secure than the front end website or app that we're using to access it. And then importantly, database performance. There's a lot of things that a DBA, database administrator, can do in order to improve the performance based on queries, how their queries are structured in the first place, how the data is structured to make the query simpler, and then something in the middle where we can make the queries actually run faster. Now that might mean talking to the sysadmin guys, where we say, hey, we want more memory for our server because then it will make it go faster. Or it might be as simple as putting an index on a table. And then the DBAs can also be involved in the database backups and recovery, because having them on board will make that easier. And so, as you can tell, there's quite a lot of different roles in a team. Some might be in the team, some might be external to the team. And it's very important that these roles can work together and collaborate. Working on your own is really hard, but working in a team is really easy because you can all bounce ideas off each other. You can all share in your experiences. You can all add ideas into the pot. And we can also share the pain when sometimes things go wrong. So having good communication tools and practices is really important now, especially with a lot of us working remotely. I rely heavily on Google Meet and also Slack. Your company might be the same. Your next contract might be different. I know that Teams and Zoom are also popular. And other instant messaging applications, I'm not sure about, especially from a corporate perspective. But interacting with your colleagues, meeting them in person from time to time, can help promote a collaborative culture. And working together as a team is, in my opinion, really good. So here's an overview of the team again. Like I said, it is in the book as well. You want to head off and go get the Who Moved My Servers book. That goes into a lot more detail about what's in the team, and also a few other things about cloud and DevOps and things. And if you want to join a team as a contractor, I can help with that too. Having been a contractor for quite a number of years now, I've got a wealth of experience and knowledge that I'd love to pass on to you. If you don't know what the next step is, then fill out our quiz. It will let you know how far you are in that journey from where you are now to being a confident contractor. And I hope to see you soon. And if there's any questions, put them in the comments below and we'll come back to you. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.